It doesn't help if that's closed. Good stuff. Good times. Good times. Yeah, we're live. It is 7:26, so a little bit late. Tonight, I want to talk about twin turbo setups because I'm going to be running one of those before too long here. And what I wanted to ask is if you do decide that you want to put two turbos on something, and we get these questions on the twin turbo stuff because we at richardholderperformance.com we have mirror image twins available. So we have the G30 770s, meaning that in the 770 part means that they'll each support 770 horsepower or thereabouts, depending on which application you're putting on. As twins, they should be able to get close to that, even on a reasonable V8. Maybe not quite there, but close. They do really well, and they do their rated power output on something really, really good, a smaller motor, a 2J or a RB or a K24 or something. But twins of those are certainly put you into the 1400 horsepower range or so. And then also we have the GTX 3582s, which we would call those like, let's say 1600 horsepower. So if you're looking for twins and you want, and then I think we've also had mirror image 3584s, which would put you even higher in the power output. And I guess you could do, I don't think we have twin G42s. I haven't seen those, at least not in mirror image. We definitely have twins because you could buy two of them. And then those would go way, past 2000 horsepower. But the question is, when you're choosing your turbo stuff, you need to choose twins for the power output that you want, just like choosing a single. So how much power do you want to make? That's the thing. Do you want to make, hey, I only want to make 600? Well, you don't need any of those. You just, as twins, you just need one of those. So if you're looking for that, you're looking for that power level. People don't normally do twins for something like that, for that low power, because it's so easy to just put one turbo on there and make the power output, particularly on an LS. I mean, if you're going to do a cammed LS, you're already going to be at somewhere between 400 and 450 or something, even on a mild 5.3. And so it doesn't take that much more to get you to 600. I mean, it's 150 horsepower. That's like a few pounds of boost. It's not very much. And so you don't go to the trouble of doing twins. And people also don't just choose twins because they're wanting to make a lot of power. I mean, we have single turbos that will go to 1200. We also have twins that would be really good for 1200. So a guy could choose between singles or twins, not based on how much power he wants. But, a lot of times twins, let's face it, they just look cooler. I mean, if you look at the thumbnail of the photo I have up, they just look awesome. And so having two of them there is, adds symmetry, especially if they're mirror image and you're looking at them, they're both kind of aiming in there from the front. This one, we fed them in the rear because that particular motor is going in a boat. But if you're looking at them from the front side, which is usually the case when we're running these things on the dyno, and you see the two turbos there, it kind of looks cool, looks good with one on each side, and they're both like mirror image, so they're shooting kind of at each other, let's say, and then going into some typically, like you see here, a Y pipe into the throttle body, because most of these things have single throttle bodies. And so they would merge together in some sort of Y. And this was, I think that this Y was dual 2.5 feeding into a 3-inch, which wasn't, I mean, ultimately it might become restrictive. But I think these were 3582s that we put on here, these twins. But, it's not going to, when you're under pressure like that sort of inlet size is not really going to be a problem. I think I would go bigger than that if I was trying to max things out. I'd pick, a lot of times the outlets out of the turbos are going to be smaller than that anyways. They're going to be less. In fact, these were probably 2-inch, 2 to 2.5, and then 2.5 into 3. And then, so I probably would do, what I would like to see when we do the twins when we run it on the aluminum 5.3 is I think I'm going to have Jimmy build a dual 3 into a 3.5. Only because that way we could either make the connection to the throttle body without a step, or with a step to 105 millimeter or something like that. We could go from 3.5 to the 4 or thereabouts, make it kind of an easy step. So that all works out good. The question though for tonight isn't do you want a single or twin. There's both of those are good, and both of those can make the power that you want. And so a lot of times people choose it, like I said, for other things. We choose it because it looks good, because it fits better. Sometimes two smaller turbos package better, because we want to just say twin turbo and not just turbo, because twin turbo has more. And so people want to do it for that. Usually making the power is not nearly an issue. So we can choose that. But the question for tonight is not that. The question is, what intake manifold would you use if you were going to do a twin turbo? In fact, let's see. We will use this as our poll for tonight. Okay. So the poll for tonight is, would you choose the high ram and tick air-to-water intercooler, like the one that I have in the thumbnail, over a Holley or Edelbrock cross ram for your twin turbo setup? So if you have two turbos, would you have them feed into a single throttle body and a lid like on a high ram, and then the lids on top of the tick like air-to-water intercooler brick on top of the high ram? Would you choose that over two turbos, one of them, feeding into an air-to-water or air-to-water or air-to-air intercooler, and then feeding into a dual throttle body, kind of cross ram? Would you rather have it, 2 into 2 or 2 into 1, basically, is kind of the thing. Which one of those do you like? So let me know which one of those. On this one, we ran the air-to-water intercoolers. The tick intercooler worked very well. And then it was a high ram, which we know is a good kind of higher RPM, let's say, combination. And this was, I think that this was a jet boat or something. And so it, the fact that a high ram might not have as good a boost response as something that you would normally want in that sort of power range. But it's not that big a deal, because a jet boat revs up, it's like a big high stall converter, and so it's making power. It's running in an RPM range under load where it's making power anyways. That's all fine. But would you pick that setup? Do you like that setup where they merge into one and go into a single throttle body? Now you probably could do a custom lid for that where you had two, but then you have to have two throttle bodies. And that's actually one of the complaints about a cross ram setup with two plenums, like the Holley one or the Edelbrock one, where you got a cross ram with two plenums on it, and then you got two throttle bodies. Well, you have to have two throttle bodies. So how do you get the throttle bodies, especially on a cross ram, because they're so far away, other than running them as drive-by-wire? You could do that to get them synced. You want what you want, just like what you want on an IR manifold, like a stack manifold, is you want all the throttle bodies opening up at exactly the same rate. You want them idled at the same throttle angle and airflow, and then you want them opening up at the same rate. So getting them to do that as drive-by-wire throttle bodies would be a lot easier than getting them to do that as mechanical throttle bodies, because then you'd have to have some sort of linkage. You'd have to have it wide together. It would, it'd all have to cross-mogenate, and everybody would have to be happy. But let's face it, a dual throttle body cross ram looks amazing. And the thing is, though, is the other one just easier and every bit as cool because it has two throttle bodies on it? So like I said, a lot of times people don't choose things based on how well it works. Otherwise, a lot of us would just be driving around on on single 4-barrel dual plane intake, which a lot of people are, small block Chevys or whatever, because that really works well. But we want these other things. We want, cross rammy goodness and an 8-stacky goodness and twin turbo-y goodness and ability goodness and carbon fiber goodness, all the goodnesses. We want all of those, even though we know that it might not be the best thing for us. So you guys let me know what you would pick. I don't think there's any bad choice here, really. So it wouldn't be surprising if it was, might even be like a 50-50 kind of, feeling like a 50-50 kind of night. 916 Lunchbox, what's going on? Michael. Todd, what's going on? It's howdy doody time. That's right. It's boost o'clock. You know your wastegate is. Your wastegate should be closed, right? Wherever it is. Richard, I'm interested in any behind the scenes talk of me knowing and critiquing you. I'd like any information. I'd like to talk to you about this. I'd like not to have a YouTube channel about. I don't have any idea what you're asking. I don't know who you are, and I don't know why I would be talking about you. We've got twin 63 millimeters on a small block Chevy. I purchased your GT35, but it has a smaller hot side. You recommended buying that turbo with the higher exhaust side. Can I buy just the upgraded hot side? Yeah, you have to get it in touch with Jimmy to find out what is it you're putting it on and what kind of power you're trying to make and all that. I remind you that the information. Yeah, I don't have any idea who you are or what you're talking about or what this is. TPI system is tricky. Does quicker ramp on the cam increase low RPM power, longer duration increase power on top? I don't know about the quicker ramp rate, but milder cams tend to be more for low RPM. Richard, your channel, enjoy all the testing. It's good size wastegate. Yeah, I don't remember if that was a 50 or a 60 on there. Or what's a good size wastegate? Okay, I thought you were talking about that particular wastegate. What's a good size wastegate? I'm sure for a Gen 1 350 twin turbo, 63 millimeter, 750, 800 horsepower. If you're doing twins, more often than not, people would use 2 wastegates. So 2 of our 50 millimeters would be fine. What's the most amount of gain you've seen on a fast compared to what? The most amount of gain I've seen on a fast would be when you compare that fast to an LS4 intake manifold. It'd be a lot. And then also the motor you're testing it on would be a thing where, if you're testing it on a stock 4.8, it's not going to gain very much power compared to the truck manifold because the rest of the motor doesn't need the extra potential that that intake manifold has. If you compare it, again, what you compare it to is important, but also the test motor that you have. So like when we did the big intake test, we tested on a 6-liter that had airflow research head. So shout out to airflow research guys, had a good size camshaft in it, was a 6-liter and not a 4.8 or a 5.3. It had flat top pistons. It had all of that stuff. So it had, it would have been even more so if it were a 408 or something like that. Did you ever get a chance to put boost back in the 8.1? Yeah, the load cell, the 8.1 didn't break the load cell. That was just a dyno thing. It wasn't because it made so much torque, because there's lots of motors on there that make hundreds and hundreds and hundreds more horsepower and torque than that motor will ever make. But we did fix the load cell on the dyno, and we did run a turbo on there. But I haven't run it again after we ran the 7 or 8 pounds or whatever that we ran back then. We'll totally do cross rams with turbos, with twin plenums and throttle bodies, because why not? It is cool. I think didn't Matt Happel do that? Didn't he run one of these HOLLEY cross rams, and then didn't he run twin turbos on that? So that would be kind of cool looking. I just don't, like I said, the controlling both throttle bodies would be an issue. Richard, I have a question. I don't know if you know offhand. Would a 5.3 or LQ9 injectors work fine in my 93 5.2 with Hughes air air gap, Howard cam, thinking of swapping the connectors. Neither one of those injectors are very big. I mean, I think that those are like 25-pound injectors. So if your motor's all stock, it would be fine, but not if it's going to be something that's got a cam and intake manifold and stuff on it. I voted yes because I hate the cross-ram intake. All right. Given that, in general terms, most stock engines can easily handle 6,500 RPM with minor spring upgrades, achieved for 6,000 peak power. Okay. On upgrading a turbo on a car that came factory turbo, would one assume that ring gap will be safe? I don't know. What they made it safe for was the factory setup and the factory tune, which is usually very conservative. So just because it's safe at a factory 7 pounds doesn't mean that it's safe for 20 pounds. How much horsepower do you think you can make with a 5.3 and twin 3584s? Well, the 3584s are rated over 900 each. So a lot. More than we made with the last Big Bang motor. I have a 2021 C300 Benz with a 2-liter 4-cylinder. Okay. Holley high rim or Texas Speed Titan intake manifold, boosted application, 400-inch. One of those is a high ram is going to make a lot more average power than that Texas Speed. If that Texas Speed is a 4-inch runner one, like a lot of those are, the high ram tends to do better through most of the RPM range, except at the very, very top. I don't know how high you're revving it. Cross-run Engine Masters performed better even with double cost of used car, but still cheap. Are you talking about the small block Chevy cross-rammy stuff? What's your ideal 6-liter setup for a jet boat as far as forced induction, turbo, or blower? I don't know what you mean by ideal. There's no universal ideal for one thing, because do you want, like, a naturally aspirated might be ideal for a guy that just wants a boat. It's a jet boat and he has his family and he just wants to go drive around and maybe ski or do that sort of stuff. For a guy that's drag racing, like Brule had it, because the class he was in had a naturally aspirated 490-inch motor, 470-something inch motor, and that worked really well. So it just depends on what you're trying to achieve. Richard, have you put more than 7 pounds at 8.1? I haven't run any more than we ran that turbo on it. What's the breaking point of a Gen 1 small block Chevy? What do you mean? Are you asking for a power level, or are you asking for a weak part, or what are you asking for? A while back, I had a twin plenum cross-ram setup on the V6. I used throttle bodies from a mid-90s Dodge V6, which had twin throttle bodies from the factory. I just had to modify the linkage. Okay. Richard, I had a Shafroff 7-liter LS3 built NA 10.3 to 1. Scott knows how to make power, but want to run a 3-liter Whipple at 8 pounds and 93 octane. Can I do a cam swap only, or would I need to lower compression? You don't, at 10 to 1 or thereabouts, you don't need to lower compression. And I don't know, I'd like to know what that camshaft is. You might not have to change anything, just put the blower on there. But I would find out what Scott put the ring gap at, though. Is the tile external wastegate with my MVR V-band something you would use? I don't know what an MVR V-band is. I don't know why you're pointing that out. Tile makes good wastegates, if that's your question. And I don't know what size tile you're using or what size tile that is. I also don't know what your combination is, what your turbo is, what your power output is, or anything. I want to use the 3584 on a small block, 224 cam, 224, 230. Concerned about back pressure. Well, the back pressure, it would be a function of the displacement and the power output of the and the NA motor, how high you're revving it, and then how much boost you're trying to run. Like, how much power are you trying to make? Any plans on a big block GMC V6? I've never even seen one in person, so I don't ever have any plans to run one. Any idea when your stage 2 8.1 cam might be available? Looking for a little more than the stage 1 produced? No, we've sold no stage 1 cam. So right now the stage 2 cam is shelved because it doesn't look like there's a market for that. I would just suggest going and getting a ZZ502. You're gonna have to change the firing order, but would you choose the high ram and tick air to water intercooler over a HOLLEY or Edelbrock cross ram for your twin turbo LS? Right at 50-50. Breaking point as far as boost goes, age and horsepower. Well, let's not do that. Let's go this way. How much power do you want to make? So let's do it that way. Because trying to set up your accommodation because of some artificial breaking point is not a way to do it. Because the vast majority of people that break motors do it not because of the strength limit of some internal component. They do it because they made a mistake somewhere. They didn't have the tune right. They didn't have intercooling. They didn't have cold air going to it. There's a lot of things that can cause problems that are not related to, oh, your connecting rods were too weak. Or if you're running stock pistons and stock connecting rods, those are going to be the weak link. Those will definitely be, you are the weakest link. Near. Breaking point isn't changing the firing order. It's just a matter of switching some plug wires. Changing the firing order has to be done. The cam is going to be different, and then you can change the firing order. But if you're running sequential in the fuel injection side of it, it's more problematic than that. Search your videos, but I can't find where you dynoed a stock LQ4 with a stock cam. I was just curious what they made in that form on a dyno. We ran Mike's LQ, which I think was an LQ4, the 6-liter, and it made like 370 or something like that. I only want a maximum of 600 horsepower. I'm old, and the C10 is Gary. Is Gary was yours a small block? If yours is a small block, then you don't have to worry about it. Yeah, that turbo would be fine. Get the bigger hot side. Seen a lot of intake comparisons for small block Chevys, but no one ever includes the stock Q-jet intake, only comparing different dual single planes. How much can you expect from an air gap over stock? I have that video. That video's up if you want to see what an air gap was versus another intake manifold. It depends on what other intake manifold you pick, but the RPM air gap and carburetor were worth a pretty good bit over the Q-jet and the stock Q-jet intake manifold. With the same concept, basically work with injectors, so just switching the wires. What are you going to do about coils? What kind of power gains and intake air temperatures are you seeing using the tick air to water intercooler? I'd have to go look at the data, but in the power range that we ran it in, it worked really well. Got a 355, 9-to-1 compression. Ring gap is good. Air to air, all fours, like 900 horsepower, 30 pounds of boost if possible. And you have what block do you have in that? And if you have forged internals, yeah, you can do that. I think it was small block Chevy for the cross ram on Engine Master. It's not big block. My bad. I watched a lot of stuff through the day. Yeah, Freiberger did some tests on some of the cross ram stuff on I'm thinking you're talking about cross ram carbureted ones like the DZ302 one, and other aftermarket companies made those as well. And I thought that he tested a few of those because I took a photo of one of them when that motor was at Westex. If that's the one you're talking about, he definitely did that. Seeing the air gap over other aftermarket intakes, but not versus a stock manifold, unless you're talking about the Ford intake manifold. I'm not talking about the Ford intake manifold. I did a if you look at the small block Chevy stuff, I'll tell you about it right now. Small block Chevy 302, 350, 3. Okay, so in this test, we started out with a bone stock. Well, with the short block was not stock. It had rods and pistons in it. It had flat top pistons in it. But we started off with all the stock stuff. So we had a 2-barrel on it. We had stock exhaust manifolds, and then we put a filter on the 2-barrel. Then we put headers on it. Then we put a Q-jet. Then we put a Y-end. But the Y-end picked up a little bit of power over the Q-jet, but lost down low. Then we put ported heads on it, and then we put. So if we look at this, so we just put kind of, ported stock stuff and a mild cam in it, ported stock head. I think they were ported 882 heads. And then we put the RPM air gap on it. So basically the only change in this test was they both had headers. One of them had a Y-end and a Q-jet. Okay, this is a Y-end and a quadra-jet, but not the Q-jet manifold. But we know that the Q-jet manifold was not as good even as the Y-end. Let's see. Let's see here. Five and 4. Okay, so if we look at and this was at a lower power level too. If the Y-end was 86, was about 8 or 9 better than the factory Q-jet manifold at the top, but in the middle part, it actually made a little bit less than the factory Q-jet manifold. When we put the RPM air gap in place of the Y-end, it was 338 and 360. So more than 20 horsepower. So if you replace a stock Q-jet manifold with an RPM air gap and a better carburetor, not a better one, we just put a HOLLEY on it. It was about 20 horsepower. So that's what you'll get going from a stock one. Do you have experiences, good or bad, with Chinese turbos, bigger ones than the famous GT45? Yeah. If you just tell me how much power you're trying to make, I can tell you what turbos that you need to run. Turbo or turbos. Could you still add boost to an LQ4 with 706 heads on 93 pump, trying to make 700 horsepower? Yeah, that's not what I would choose to do, but you can. An LQ4 is a dish piston anyways. Even with a 706 head, the compression is not going to be super high. But on 93, you're just going to have to take timing away from it. But you can definitely put a turbo on there. What's the video title? I'll give the video a watch. For what? Oh, I don't know what the title is. I'd have to go look it up. Difference between a Ford versus a 302 roller cam with 341 firing order. The firing order thing was just something that they did for probably NVH or something. It's not a performance advantage. I would more look at that as in terms of availability stuff. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and ring the bell. Do all that stuff. I would choose TIC's low profile model intercooler. Yeah, they do a good job. I like the TIC stuff. Is it harder an engine that makes a 250 horsepower NA to boost it to 650 than it would be the same engine that had 350 before boosting it? I don't know what you mean harder on the engine. If they're both making the same power, ultimately the cylinder pressure is probably going to be the same. The one thing that is going to happen is you're going to have to run more boost going from 250 to 650 than 350 to 650. So the boost will be higher. So the charge temperature will probably be higher. So if there was a detonation threshold that you were getting to because of air temperature and not because of cylinder pressure, that would tend to be more problematic. Matthew, 1200 to 1500. Yeah, our twin 3584s or twin 3582s will get you there. G42 1450 is a single one of those is good. Yep. No worries on the title. Just watch anyone that seems close. Yeah, I'd have to go look it up. I just don't know what it is. It'd be like back to basics or something like that. The upgraded engine will need less boost to hit the target power level. Yep. Yep. We just went over that. Wiring in an aftermarket ECU takes a lot of work on my first go around. Yes, it does. If you're having if you're wiring it in and having the gauges and all that stuff work, that's a lot. How about a Vortec 305 head series where you put them on an L31 and compare horsepower and torque with a 350 Vortec heads? Are you wanting to do that only because is the chamber smaller on the 305 head? I'd like to do some research on that and see because that's not what I would do. I would never put the 305 heads on there because I'm almost certain that they flow less, and so that's not a compromise I'd make. I just mill the 350 heads. When two turbos are used, is an exhaust balance tube between the two necessary? An exhaust balance tube? No. Just made a deal yesterday on an 86 Firebird. Nice. 2.8 liter V6. Kind of excited to add a turbo to it. Have you seen builds on those? I have not. The bottom end on the 2.8 is kind of weak. Might not survive very long. I think it would be fine at 7 pounds or something, as long as I don't know how you're going to tune it. What size turbo for 900 to 1,000 horsepower on 355? If you're doing twins, you should get our G30 770s. Forgive me for my ignorance. Do you sell performance parts? Yeah, I now have a store after many, many years. Finally. It's richardholderperformance.com. For the big turbo question, I'm building a stock bottom end 5.3, aiming for around or a little over 1,000. Yeah, 1,000 horsepower at the crank is just a G42 turbo. That's easy. Just get one of our G42s from richardholderperformance.com. Found a 1.9 blower kit for my Land Cruiser. Nice. Twin turbo 355. Is it possible to delete the ECU and just run NA? More boost. I get that. I'm just wondering if there's something that would be problematic as long as the drive pressure and inland air temperatures are kept under control. Aftermarket stuff for my engine's not there. Well, you should not try to make a lot of power if you're running lots of boost on it. It's going to be hard on it anyways. So you should run low boost. 305 Vortex have smaller chambers. They do flow less, but still better than everything except the 350 Vortex. Kind of like a 706 on a 6.0 head test, but for Vortex. Matt, what is the difference in chamber size between those? I just milled the 350 heads. Main problem with the 2.8 is the bottom end oiling. I've seen people machine the crankshaft to add oiling passages and a better oil pump. What oil pump would you suggest for a twin turbo application? You can go with the high volume one. Melling has stuff if that's an LS. How bad is a non-intercooled Eaton M112 for fuel octane requirement? It's really bad. Especially maybe not on the first run, but very few people, like if you have a ice bag on it and then you push it up to the starting line and then you start it up and do your burnout and take off, it's not too bad. But after you've made a pass and then it's non-intercooled and then you try to run it again, it'll be pretty hot. So it's not ideal. 58 to 60 cc's. And what is the 350? Is it 64? That's like half a point. I don't know that that's enough that I would do that. Half a point would be 1.5 to 2% change in power. So 5 or 6 horsepower minus whatever the airflow change is. That doesn't seem like a lot. But wouldn't it be cool if you did that and then it was 20 horsepower? It's not going to be, but a 706 head versus a 317 head definitely can be. But on that one, you're changing at 10 or 11 cc's. It's a lot. Yeah, the 706 head versus a 317 head is a big change. And arguably, I think a better change too, because the smaller valves and the smaller ports and all that, I think would help it make more torque, not just the combustion chamber. Was the 3rd gen TA 4.3 or 2.8? I don't know. I think a 3rd gen is a 2.8, their base V6. I don't think that they put 4.3s in Camaros. They had 3.8s. GM did not put a 4.3 liter V6 on a Camaro from the factory. I didn't think so. 112 would be awesome on a 2UZ, but I'm keen on needing octane booster. I'm not keen, yeah. Plus turbo might cost the same after everything is done. Yeah, you could put water meth on it and help that. You know, you could inject it into the blower, just on the inlet side, on the throttle body side is fine. That would help that. It's not going to do exactly what a intercooler does, but it would be better than not, and it's fairly inexpensive to do. Thanks for answering my questions. Turbo Trans Am was a 3.8 Grand National engine with front-wheel drive heads to fit. The Turbo Trans Am was the Grand National motor, yeah. But the 3.8 that I'm talking about was not the Grand National motor that they used in the Camaros. It was a 3800, I know. I think the TTA was a 3.8 V6, yeah. Our polls at 50-50. Would you choose a high ram and tick air to water over a Holley? Come to LS Fest. I know Jimmy and I should go there. I believe my truck has 823 heads. My brain doesn't remember all the numbers. 823 heads do exist. Those would be Recport heads. So it'd have to be a factory 6-liter or 6.2 to have 823 heads on it. 4th gen's got the 3800, but not the 3rd gens. Third gen, 4th gen, 2nd gen. I think I've owned any of the other generations other than 2nd. Maybe a single GTX 3584 RS or twin R33 GTR turbos would be good instead. No excuses for not having an intercooler then. Yeah. A twin 35, I mean, a single 3584 would be fine for what you're doing, I'm sure. And then you could run an intercooler on it. But if you want to put the blower on there and it goes on there, that'd be good. 3800 should be an easy swap in a 3rd gen, and it would run circles around the 2.8. It definitely would. I mean, the 2.8 was what, 120 or 30 horsepower or something, and at least the 3800 you could, which would be good, and then you could just use the performance. We did on a 3100 or a 3400 Grand Am, but I think that that's a different engine family than the 2.8 was. it was very easy because all we had to do was put the it has a crossover tube because it was front wheel drive, so it has a crossover tube going from the front to the rear, just like the 3800 L67s and just like those. And so we just made a mount for the turbo right there. Just cap the back of the exhaust so it doesn't run out the exhaust like the back flange, and then put the turbo there, run the exhaust down, feed it in, add I think we put an FMU on it to run more fuel pressure. And it worked good. I think we ran 7 or 8 pounds on it on the. We only ran it on the dyno. In fact, on the exhaust on the turbo, I think we just aimed it straight up because it was on the chassis dyno. So we just aimed it. I think we may have even took the hood off or something. Maybe we aimed it so we didn't have to do that. But we just aimed it. So we didn't want it. We knew we weren't going to run the thing like on the exhaust up, and so it had a provision for an O2 sensor. So FMU tuning that would leave an air fuel ratio for that thing that was in the 11s. We just put good fuel in it, and so it had whatever factory timing was. $3,800 is better than a 2,800 because it's 100 better. So we know that right off the bat. So we're at 50-50. Cross rams do look good. And the cross ram, I have to say the HOLLEY cross ram was one of the few that I've seen that did better than even down low, did better than the truck manifold, which was rare. Same engine family as the 2.8, but a newer version. Yeah. 31 and 3400s have aluminum heads, coil packs, sequential. I thought that they were the same engine family. Multi-port 3.1 was solid with a 5-speed in your Beretta, yep. But head gaskets to use with a high boost LS engine. We on the Big Bang motor, we use factory LS9 gaskets and CA625 ARP studs, and then just had the surfaces machined so that they were the right RA for the MLS head gaskets, and just tightened the CA625 head studs way down, and that's the one that made 1500. We didn't have any issues with head gaskets on that. We're coming out with a new cam, our new cam. We're still working on that. That's still in the testing phase. Why do you want a cam that makes 100 horsepower? There's already cams out that do that. we wouldn't be the only ones. There are big cams out there already that will make that compared to a stock cam. But it's not, there's always going to be a trade-off. So if you go put some sort of, like if you put the BTR Stage 4 LS3 camshaft in there, the Summit Stage 4 camshaft, even one of the comps, the 459 or 469, that's probably going to give you a solid 100 over a stock LM7 camshaft. We're trying to make it not that big because we want to limit the amount of trade-off that would be associated with that. Because I think that that's still important. That camshaft would not be like a max effort kind of camshaft, because I don't think that that's a small market. I think as we go up and up in cam timing and power production at the top, I think the market for that gets smaller and smaller. Thanks for all the great information throughout the years. Thank you guys for watching. Oh, we had a blip. Yes, the yeses are 51%. That they would choose the high ram. 5149. I'm curious what you come up with for 100 horsepower cam 2. Your other ones are, shall we say, conservative. That's because the market. That's because those are the cams that sell. We don't get into, I'm going to make more power than you. I'm not interested in that. It's not an ego thing. I've learned a lot through the wiring with this ECU. My engine's the same as a ground sensor. Cam home is the same as a ground sensor. Haltech only wants all of the sensors to converge into one sensor ground. Really, the Haltech does that? What do you use to lube the ARP head bolts in an LS? We use the ARP lube that they supply with the head bolts. I'd like to see that comparison as well. The 3900 is underrated. 3800, you mean? this the thing here? Oh, 3800 versus 3900 would be interesting. 39 was only out for a couple of years. Was that the same V6 engine family? What did they make bigger on it to make it a 3900? Guess I'll have to try the 2.8 liter turbo and swap it with an 8100. That would be good. But the thing is, it's all relative. It doesn't matter that a 8.1 makes more, or Godzilla makes more, or Coyote turbo, or whatever. You know, unopened. Or Coyote friend the other night. All that matters is that you have something like a 2.8, and it does what it does. And if you add a turbo and you put 7 pounds on it, it's going to do it 50% faster now. So maybe not 50% faster, but it's going to make 50% more power, and that's good. It doesn't matter that somebody else's thing makes more than that. You just made yours better. Because honestly, I don't know that unless you have a way to tune that, you're gonna have to take timing away, and I don't know how you're gonna do that. There are different pins for sensor grounds, but on my engine it has more than 3 sensors. 3900 was the G6, 3500 pushed even bigger. Was the biggest of the 60-degree family. Yeah, that's almost a 4-liter V6. That's big. Appreciate all of the knowledge. Got a lifetime of knowledge. That's one of my wife's favorite movies. Let's see. I think we should have, I think I should try to set up some what if scenarios maybe. Have you done any testing with an L8T? I haven't. I've only Gen 5 testing I've done is with a L83, but that's just like a 400-inch version of them, which obviously is good. I mean, it's like a 400M versus a Cleveland, as long as you put good Cleveland heads on it. Those have weak rods in them, and so you have to upgrade that. But then otherwise, it's essentially a stroker LT1, which is good. You know, a bigger LT1 as long as you fix the rod problem if you're going to try to make a lot of power. But you can make lots of power with those. We're looking into Gen 5 stuff. We'll have Gen 5 stuff this year. In 2026 is the plan. Have some cool stuff. Coolio. I heard the LG4 Trans Am at Autocross last year. That's what prompted me to get this project race car. That's what I did, was too much to run it. So how did you hurt it? Did you if it was autocrossing, did you oil starve it or something? That's a common problem for road race cars. You always have good shirts on. Wait, this month, well, at the end of this month, we're going to have new shirts. And the new shirts are really, really cool. Even way cooler than this. Somebody put LS3 heads on an L8T for turbo testing. Don't remember who. You can interchange the Gen 5 and Gen 4 stuff. Obviously, the bore size has to be right for the thing that you're testing it on. I don't know why you would do that. I mean, honestly, I just you get lots of views if you do these hybrid things, because Brian did one, but because we talked about this a long time ago. I'm like, Brian, we need to, and this was years and years ago. This is when LT stuff was first coming out. I said, Brian, look at the airflow of an L83 head, and then look at the airflow of a stock 706 head. I said, if we could just take those LT heads and put them on a 5.3, and that would be an upgrade, that would be a good upgrade. You know, he's like, oh yeah, no, that'd be good. And then he started looking into it. Okay, so he's like, okay, well, if we did that, we'd have better heads, and we'd have, and I think it's a smaller chamber too, so we would have more compression. Okay, first thing we have to do is we got to get rid of the DI, because we're not going to make a Gen 4 DI motor, so it's not going to be DI. So you have to make it port injected. So we have to have which is not a problem. But if we're going to run those heads, we also have to run that Gen 5 manifold. So the manifold has to be there. We then also have to run Gen 5 valve train, So the rocker assemblies and stuff. We also have to have a different camshaft because of the valve orientation is different in the Gen 5 head than it is in the Gen 4 head. So you have to have a custom cam made. You have to have the Gen 5 exhaust because of where the ports are. You have to have a dedicated header for that. And then you also have to have some sort of front accessory drive, which now I think somebody makes. But back then, nobody made it. He said, so you have to change essentially everything. I'm like, why don't you just put the L83 motor in there? It's a lot easier. He's like, yeah, it kind of turned out to be like that. Your cam intake comparison for the 8.1 was appreciated. Happy that somebody watched that. I think was to use non-direct injectors for ease of tuning. How much do the shirts cost? I don't see any on the website. The shirts are not up there anymore because we're out of shirts, like these kinds of shirts. It said wrong cam, I think, the shirts that we were selling before. That goes way back, though. The new shirts will be up as soon as they're ready. And we'll have hoodies too, but we only did a limited run of hoodies because we are in the middle of winter right now, but and hoodies are cool. So I'll let you guys know, I'll let the live feed people know first that the shirts are up and I'll wear one, and then the hoodies will be up because I got one myself. Got Jimmy and I both got one, but you guys got to order them right away. Can I ask when you hope to see the spring package for sale as well as a stage 2 cam? Any luck with ported factory heads? I haven't found anybody that has ported factory heads or that wants to port my heads. I do want to try that intake manifold. Amos has spring packages. He can put together one for you. The stage 2 cam is probably not going to happen now because nobody bought any of these stage 1 cams, so the market must not be very big for this. I thought it would be good because of the pricing of all the Radar stuff and the other things that are available for that. But people don't seem to be too interested in it. Yes, I oil starved it, developed a knock, haven't torn it down too much. High RPM and cornering, yeah. I think oil pooling in the heads. Maybe someone can enlighten me. I don't know what oil pan you're using on that, but it's on high cornering loads. It's pretty easy to pull it away from a truck pan or something like that. Here in Florida, people wear hoodies when it's 80 degrees outside. Well, good. We'll sell them in the summertime as well. Didn't someone offer to port the heads for you once and then stole them? Yeah, the 3800 heads went somewhere and then they just stayed there. So I don't know what happened to that dude. I mean, it's not like 3800 heads are really valuable, but maybe once he ported them, he's like, I'm going to sell these. Like, I would have just given him another set that he could have done that to if he needed the money. I don't really understand that, but yeah, it would have been better if those kind of came back. And the other thing with the 8.1 heads is they're iron heads. So if I ship them, if you ship these heads to somebody, have them port them, and then pay them to port them, and then have them shipped back, I'm like, that's going to be a lot of money for ported iron heads that after I do the dyno test, I don't care about. Summer hoodies, that's right. We did the shirts and the hoodies in black. So, because people were asking about that. So, and plus, black is very slimming. And I think we went up to 2X or 3X, I think. Somebody offered, I think, or at least made a comment about porting the stock heads, but I didn't ever hear anything back from them. Porting the stock 8.1 heads, which I'd like to try. I'd just like to see how much it helps. But if you're wanting a stage 2 cam right now, you should just get a ZZ502 because it would be kind of like that, be right in that range. I also want to get an electric scooter, I think. I was going down rabbit holes today. I saw all kinds of cool stuff that I wanted. Shouldn't go look on there. Oh, I definitely need that. Oh, a little air pump that allows me to swim underwater 30 feet. That's perfect. I definitely need that. I definitely have to have that for the next time I go on vacation. I did buy one of the. It's essentially just a scuba tank. It's a small one that you wear, but it's just a scuba tank. But it came in a cool case, and it came with an air pump that so you don't have to take the tank in, and it's only good for about 10 minutes or whatever. Um, it came with a real high pressure air pump, and basically the high pressure air pump is like a super version of the ones that you would use for like bike tires. Those are only 100 psi, but these are, I don't know, 1,000 psi or a few thousand psi or whatever. And so I remember pumping that thing up, and eventually we just broke the pump because the seals are not designed for that sort of pressure, and there's a lot of pressure there, and it takes a long time to pump it up. I think that they probably have electric pumps now, but like I said, the cylinder is only this big or whatever. I'm like, I'm just going to get a scuba tank and do that. Is there such a thing as a right hand rotation water pump for the LS? I've never seen that. Saw a kid cruising in 45-mile-an-hour traffic with an electric scooter. Some of them are fast, and the electric bikes are like that too. I've seen some fast electric bikes. I kind of think I want a scooter because the areas that I want to go, I just want to cruise along the road and do road searches for snakes. And being that close, I think, is better for me. Do you have an opinion on the Mercury 24 valve heads for LSs and LT engines? I was just curious because I was reading an article about it. I think it's very, very cool. And the guys at Mercury Marine, the engineers, know how to make power. They're very good at it. I've seen those motors. I think I saw one at. I'm pretty sure I did. Saw one at. It was either PRI or SEMA, and that's been a while. I haven't seen the LT version. This was an LS version. But yeah, they know what's up. That's what's up. Night School. It's a good movie. That's what's up. Just fear catching a pebble and going head over heels at 45. Yeah, you don't want to do that. So if I'm following correctly, there's no need to port 802 heads on the 6-liter. Are you talking about 706 heads? Those air tanks are great for children in shallow pools, pre-scuba play. They are. My sons use them so that they could kind of get used to swimming around in the pool and stuff. And when we were on vacation, my older son, this is when he was young too, they brought scuba stuff over, and they're like, okay, let me show you how to do it. And he just like, and just was swimming around. Because as you're a kid, you're like, yeah, I got this, I'm good. And he just did it. It was perfect. Some people get, claustrophobic with that, having a mask on, have a thing on. I would much rather be under the water than almost anywhere else. It's very peaceful for me, and I love seeing all the stuff that you don't get to see when you're walking around. It's very cool. And the little air tank was cool, but like I said, a lot of people, especially people that are just starting out, when they're breathing with this stuff, breathe really fast. They go through air really fast. I don't do that. I would rather be under for a really long time. What ring gap do you use on a turbo LS? We use 6/1000ths per inch of bore. So it depends on bore size, but anywhere 24 to 30 is good. Yeah, you can port the 706 heads on a 6-liter. It will help. If you're going to turbo it, I wouldn't worry about it. I'm working on a Chevy 283 factory ram horn manifolds. Not sure what kind of cam would work best with those manifolds. There's not a cam that works best with those manifolds. That's not accurate. All you're doing with those manifolds is just restricting the power, and it's going to make less power than it would if it were to have long tube headers on it. But that's just going to be a function of the manifolds themselves. There's not a cam that works better with those than there is with something else. So you're just going to cam it according to how much power you want to make, and the cylinder heads and the intake manifold, the carburetor, and that sort of stuff. The manifolds are just going to be restrictive. What's the next year or two hold for you in testing new things? I'm going to test as many things. I'm an advanced diver as well. I'm not an advanced diver. I'm not even certified. I've done lots and lots of diving, but I'm not even certified. Because when we were not when I was young, but I was I don't know, probably 20. We'd always done lots of snorkeling and stuff, but we, looking back then, when I was living in Southern California, we looked through the recycler, and a guy was selling all of his scuba stuff. He was an airman, and he was being transferred, and so he wanted to get rid of it all. He said, "Yeah, here's everything. There's the mask, BC, snorkel, fins, tank, regulator, all the stuff that you need." And he said the tank's even full because we were going to go out. I'm like, perfect. This is what we need. And we bought it. And I just put everything on. And at Newport Beach, just walked out into the water and just started scuba diving. Obviously, a 30-30 cam for the 283. Yeah, you got to do that, right? Every cam is a header cam. That's right. Get 2.5-inch ram horn manifold. Those are better than the smaller ones. Summit K1103 versus the World. What is that? What cam combination is that? I'm assuming that that's what that is. Oh, 214, 224. Okay, that's a good street cam. And the 283, just like the 48 LS, I would go small on the cam. Like a 283 with a 30-30 cam in it, I think would be horrendous. It would make no bottom end and isn't big enough to take advantage of the top end. The one thing that's nice is, relatively speaking, because it's a 280, well, it's going to have power. I was thinking it has fuelie heads on it, but it doesn't. It has, well, and it would have power pack heads on it. It'd have the early fuelies with the small valves and stuff in it. So it's just not, I was thinking it had more than enough airflow, but it doesn't. It doesn't. 283s are cool, though, because when you pop the hood and say I have a 283, it's going to be different than a 350 Chevy. Got one more minute. But Moto rough stock. I plan on getting certified. I'd like to get certified before we go to. We'll usually go to Mexico to go snorkeling. So snorkel fins, masks, a standard issue for Australia kids growing up. Yeah, it should be. I think it should be for every kid, and it was immediate for me when I was little. I mean, we were in lakes, we were in zero visibility stuff, we were everywhere in rivers and creeks and the ocean, obviously. Tahoe, when we lived up there, it was cold, but the visibility is really good up there. So everywhere we went, I went in streams, and we would go in streams and snorkel and see trout and salmon and stuff. I just loved being there. We made our own Hawaiian slings with aluminum poles and surgical tubing and a hose clamp, and then we took ice picks and sanded down the wood, because these were wooden handle ice picks. These are OG ones. And then we hammered that into the end of the aluminum pole, and then we used those. You just had to be careful that as it went by, that the surgical tubing and hose clamp didn't like get you as it went by, because it would take off pieces of skin. We tried drilling a hole in it and putting the surgical tubing in it, but it ended up just wanting to cut the surgical tubing. So the hose clamps and tape seemed to work best, but you had to be leery of that. So, there was some finesse to it, because we couldn't spend the money on real Hawaiian slings, the nice ones. But we used to go up to the lake and spear carp and stuff. And if a bass or a trout got close enough, but they're smarter than that. But the carp are just swimming around like I'm kind of a dinosaur and I don't care. And you'd stick them and they're like, I'm mostly cartilage anyways. It's not really going to hurt me. How long can I hold my breath for? I think the longest I've ever held my breath was like 3.5 minutes. But I kind of want to work on that now. I got all excited when I saw what's her name from Titanic. She now has the record for, because Tom Cruise could do his for like 6.5 minutes, and she did it for over 7 minutes. And I don't think she was swimming around or doing anything. I think she was just like face underwater kind of thing. But I'm not saying just, because I don't want to take anything away from that, because that's amazing. My buddy could swim underwater for 3 minutes, quite a distance. That's hard to do. That's a lot. The other thing that I had when we went down to Mexico with my kids is so that I could go snorkeling. I bought aqua scooters and we brought them with us. And so the aqua scooters, they're to me, it's like that's like James Bond technology. And so because I could hold my breath for a long time, we could go down with the aqua scooters since you're not expending energy and I'm calm underwater. Then I could be under there for a long time, just cruising around, looking around at all kinds of stuff. And it was down. We were down where guys were scuba diving, so it was pretty fun. That's to Puerto Rico, Philippines. Yeah, my dad got certified in the Philippines when he was in the Navy. Did my open water dive in January at Lake Tahoe. That's cool. It's cold there. We did a lot of diving in Emerald Bay. Thanks for the tech talk. Leafy sea dragon in South Australia. Very cool. Yep. It's only some extension you can put into a snorkel and keep working. Yeah, we found that out immediately in the pool because we're like, oh yeah, snorkels work good. So let's just use a garden hose. And then we started going underwater with the garden hose. We're like, yeah, this is not working. Our lungs are not that tough. We cannot do that. On that note, it is time to go. Thank you guys all for showing up, and I will be back tomorrow.